Hello Group 402, this is weekly feedback number 4. So in this video I'm going to first review some key concepts from pages 84 and 85 in your textbook. So first, we had some expressions with if that you typically hear more in spoken rather than written English. So I'm going to go over a couple important ones and explain what they actually mean in case that wasn't clear from the reading. So first, we have would it be okay if ... and then you fill in the blank. So, for example, if I say, would it be okay if I borrow your pencil? That's a question. So I'm asking if it's okay for me to perform this action, and you can fill in anything that you would like or that you can imagine. So let's look at another example. Could I have a word with you, ... if you have a minute? So that's saying that if you have the minute, then I would like to have a word with you. You might not. So I'm requesting some of the listener's time in that example. Let's look at another one. If it was Thursday, it was a Thursday, not a Tuesday, ... if I remember correctly. So that's saying that if your memory is not failing, then you are stating a fact, or you're correcting the record. Instead of it being a Tuesday, it was actually a Thursday, based on the memory of the speaker. So again, these are phrases or expressions that you'll more often hear in spoken rather than written English. So I just wanted to review and kind of explain what they mean when you hear them. So next, let's take a look at word pairs. These are word pairs that always come together and typically are opposites. Again, you will hear these a lot more in spoken rather than written English. So the first word pair that we have from the reading would be then and there. That means at that specific time and place. So in the reading, they say that they purchased an item then and there. So at that moment, at that place, they liked it so much, they decided right away to purchase the item. That's what they are referring to. Now, let's look at another word pair. We have ups and downs. So these are good things and bad things. So most often you'll hear people say life has ups and downs. So it has good points and bad points. So again, that's a word pair. You have ups and downs, and they're typically said together. So let's look at this one. You've probably heard this one a lot, especially in our class. Pros and cons. So pros are benefits or advantages of something. Cons are drawbacks or detractors or negative aspects of something, like a plan, a product, whatever it may be. So in this case, you have pros and cons. Notice how in every word pair, they have opposite meanings. So they complement each other in that sense. But you'll typically always hear them together. Finally, we have sooner or later. So that means that we don't know exactly when something might happen. It might happen soon after this is said, or much later. But the idea here is that something will inevitably happen. So that's what that means when you hear sooner or later. And notice that sooner is the opposite of later. So again, they're always opposites of each other in these word pairs. Moving on, going to review some ideas from pages 86 and 87 in your textbook. So here, you had to investigate the meaning of highlighted words in the text boxes that appear. So some of the words I might not be clear, so I'm just going to review the meaning to help out with that. So one of the highlighted words was downright. That means utter and complete. So if it was downright horrible, it was just completely horrible, completely unpleasant. There is no two ways about it. That's what that expression means, or that word in this case. Another expression that was highlighted is grind to a halt. This means, sometimes it's not literally, sometimes this also means figuratively, but essentially it's that something is going to progress or move more and more slowly until it stops. That's what grind to a halt means. Another highlighted word was resilient. This means able to withstand or recover from adversity, from difficulties, from something else. So you can say that if you're camping and it's very windy, but your tent doesn't get blown away, you could say it's very resilient. It's able to withstand those difficult, windy situations, right? So next word would be mind-boggling, or phrase in this case. This means that something is overwhelming or startling. So it boggles your mind. You can't process it initially because it's so overwhelming or it's so shocking when you first hear it. Now let's look at munching. You've probably heard this one. This means to eat something with an audible jaw action. So you know some people chew with their mouth open, and they make a lot of noise when they eat? That would be munching as opposed to chewing. So it's basically loud chewing that you can hear. Okay? So another highlighted word was divisible. This simply means able to be divided. Now also keep in mind, this doesn't just mean in mathematical context. This could also be in the real world. Let's say we're talking about a group of people with conflicting ideologies. You could say that group is very divisible. They're able to be divided based on what they think. So it's not always just about math. Keep that in mind. Another highlighted term was taken into account. When we say something has been or should be taken into account, we're saying that it was considered or that it was factored in or that it should be when we make a decision or when we do some kind of analysis. Okay? Now we have trigger. This simply means an event that starts an event or a reaction. So in the text, the way they use trigger, they don't literally mean trigger as you would see on a gun. Instead, they just mean, like I said, an event that is going to start another event or a reaction. So like the starting point for that. Now, let's look at painstakingly. This means with great care and thoroughness. So if I said I painstakingly went through the house to try to find the lost button, that means that you were very careful and you were very thorough when you performed this activity or when you did something. Now we have tedious. This just means very boring. So if you don't like a movie or you're doing something you don't like and it's boring you, you say that was tedious, or this event or this activity is tedious. Now the last word I wanted to talk about are strokes. Not the band. Strokes in this context would be a mark made by a writing implement with a stroke of my pen or with the stroke of my pencil. Or it could also be a hit. So a stroke would be like when they hit something physically with an object, right? So those were the important concepts to have remembered from those pages. And then finally, on pages 88 and 89, you had some reading to do about complaints made by people, and the exercise is asking us to figure out which activity in the word box above they are actually complaining about. So you had to decide on the match between those two. So that's it for this feedback video. If you have any questions for me, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next week.